Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question and answer section, or you can raise your hand. We will start with the presentation. There will be a survey that's going to take place during this town hall, and then we'll have a question and answer session during the end. So I would like to invite Nikki to speak. Welcome to our town hall meeting number 1 for the OST Palm Center Livable Center Study.
Thank you, guys. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our first town hall meeting for the OST Palm Center Livable Center Study. My name is Nikki Knight, and I'm the interim program manager of the Greater Southeast Management District, geographically branded as Houston Southeast. Our hope is that on this evening, you'll gain a better understanding of the critical nature of this collaborative work and the value of your participation. We cannot do this without you. This work is a continuation of the decades of foresight, strategy, and investment led by the forerunners of our generation, many of which are still active and advocating for our area today. We understand that this area has been overstudied, and now it's time to put many of the great ideas into action. Before I hand it off to Ms. Holman, I would like to extend a few special thank yous to our elected officials, Representative Garnett Coleman, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Mayor Sylvester Turner, Council Member Carolyn Evans Shabazz. Also to our civic leaders and residents who lead the charge daily in preserving our history, culture, and economic vitality of the OST Palm Center. And lastly, to Houston-Galveston Area Council, OST Almeda Corridors Redevelopment Authority, and TIRZ 7 for partnering with the district to bring this study to life. I hope you enjoyed tonight's meeting and plan to stay connected and engaged throughout the study. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll now hand it off to Ms. Anita Holman with H-GAC. Thanks again.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here tonight. As mentioned, my name is Anita Holman, and I'm a principal planner with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, and we're bringing you this study. I just want to be very clear that we have about, you can go to the next slide, Christina. We have 12 years of history in this region. We have 41 past local sponsors who are implementing livable center recommendations today, moving forward with making their communities more walkable and sustainable for live, work, and play. So I just want to be very clear that this is a transportation study where we really are trying to look at walkability. However, in this study, we also want to acknowledge that we have to look at land use because we're concerned about where you're walking to and why. So we look at housing and we look at economic development. The last thought I want to leave you with is that within our 12-year history, we also track implementation. So that's to say the Houston-Galveston Area Council understands that you don't want more plans, and neither do we. What we want to do is make sure we're giving you recommendations that you can implement. And Ms. Nikki Knight and I will be working on this and coming back to you actually every 2 years where we have a report card and we actually grade our studies towards implementation. So I wanted to make that very clear as we move into the next round of slides. So with that, I'll hand it back to the team.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Cowan. I am with Stantec. I am a Director of Urban Planning and Landscape Architecture here at Stantec Houston. On this project, I am the project manager. With me from Stantec is Hassan Modoon, transportation lead with Stantec here in Houston, and he will be overseeing the multimodal transportation. Our partners on this project are Touchpoint Strategies. And from Touchpoint, we have Damon Williams, who's spearheading the funding and partnerships as well as community engagement. But you'll hear a lot from Christina Cornelius with Touchpoint Strategies this evening. She's really spearheading and overseeing the community engagement this evening. On our partners are Gage Engineering, and their role for this project is really to dig down into the infrastructure of the project area. They're looking for CIP funding. They're looking at cost and implementation and getting down to the nitty-gritty. And for market and economic analysis, we have Steve Spillett of CDS with us this evening. Next slide, please. So why are we meeting? Well, we're meeting tonight to introduce you, the community, to the project. You're the community experts, and we want to listen to you. We need your input, and we need your advice on items that are concerning you in the community. And we want you to tell others to really spread the word about this project. As Nikki and Anita have said, we know the area has had previous studies, numerous previous studies. But the purpose of our project is to work with you, the community, to develop a unified implementation plan, one that builds upon those previous studies, but ultimately looks for the missing pieces and gels them together for improved mobility, improved safety, a healthier community, and a positive economic development. Next slide. So the study area bounded by the red line here generally includes Brays Bayou to the north, Spur 5 and McCalla Road as our eastern boundary, Yellowstone Boulevard to the south, and 288 to the west. Highlighted in purple here is the primary focus areas of this project. And they include McGregor Park, Palm Center, Griggs Road, and Old Spanish Trail corridors. And with that, I'll hand it over to Hassan to talk about the process and really walk you through that.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll spend just a bit of time talking about the process, and this Livable Center studies typically take 9 months, and a lot really happens in those 9 months. So we kicked off the project earlier this year, and we'll be working through 4 key steps that'll take us to September of this year. The study process, as mentioned by Anita, Nikki, and Bradley, is really to consolidate, completed studies as well as the ongoing studies that are currently happening in the community, and develop a livable center study that focuses on a unified implementation plan. So with that, what we're hoping to achieve, what we would love to work with you in achieving is developing a single collective vision that's backed by a 10-year capital improvement program. And then also identifying, the funding mechanisms as well as the public-private partnerships that will be required to implement those projects. So we're at the start of the project at step 1, which is really just to understand the current needs of the community. And we want to be very careful with this step because we know that a lot of studies have been done. So it's really consolidating, synthesizing all those previous studies into one collective understanding of what's planned and what are the missing pieces. And so we're currently at this first step. The following steps after that we've completed that will be to come up with a conceptual plan of proposed recommendations, which we will be sharing with the community in a few months. And then taking some of those recommendations after we've received some feedback from the community and detailing them a bit in terms of coming up with renderings, looking at the physical constraints. Can we implement them? What are some of the concerns that we would have during the design phase and later steps after the Livable Center study is completed? And then the last step is really to tie it all together and come up with an implementation plan, which is a 10-year capital improvement program, as well as the funding or the estimated costs, as well as the funding sources. So, a big component of the study is to really consolidate the previous studies. And we knew from the onset that, the community has studied the area for the last 10 years, close to 10 years. And it's really time to implement now. And that's really what we're hoping to achieve through this 9-month process. as part of the current step that we're in, we are looking at consolidating all of the previous recommendations from the last 8+ years for studies that have been completed in the community. Some of those are very focused to the Old Spanish Trail and Palm Center study area, and Southeast Houston has commissioned those studies, and they've been completed in recent years. And those include recent studies such as the OST South Union Strategic Action Plan, which some of you may have been involved in, the ongoing McGregor Park Master Plan update that's currently ongoing, the Palm Center redevelopment plan, and so those are very local to the community and have very specific recommendations. Other previous studies are citywide, and despite them being citywide, they do have very relevant recommendations for the community. And those include large programs such as Metro Next, with planned bus and light rail improvements, such as the Scott Street Boost Corridor, as well as the Purple Line LRT extension to the east. And so we would look at all those pieces and come up with a strategy to help get those implemented. As part of the process, we are going to build on the current Southeast Houston initiatives, and those include recent installation of recycle stations, also the implementation of the neighborhood greenways that are coming online, and more of those will be coming in the community. Other initiatives that the Livable Center Study would look to help achieve and implement include the custom bus shelters that have really unique amenities such as USB charging ports and LED lighting. Ongoing safety studies at Mikawa and Griggs that's currently in development. We would take those into account. And as I mentioned earlier, the McGregor Park Master Plan update, which is currently in development as well. So we would look to kind of build on all those ongoing initiatives as part of this process. We are going to take a few minutes now and just walk through what we would call kind of existing conditions, and we'll focus on a few themes here. We'll start off with mobility, and we're not going to talk about all aspects of the road. We'll focus on the key ones that relate to walking, cycling, and transit. The Old Spanish Trail, Palm Center area has a good bicycle network, particularly along the bayous and around McGregor Park. We know that the City of Houston Bike Plan has identified several key corridors within the study area, some of which have been implemented and others are either programmed or planned. And so we are taking that into account, and as part of our process are identifying opportunities to accelerate the implementation of the cycling network, identify gaps that we would like to address based on community feedback, as well as to find other opportunities to partner with the City of Houston to roll some of the bicycle improvements as part of wider capital improvements programs or projects. And we'll touch on that in a few minutes. In terms of the pedestrian network or the sidewalk network, the Old Spanish Trail, the OST Palm Center area has a good sidewalk network. Most of the major streets, major corridors in the study area have sidewalks on both sides. However, the condition of those sidewalks vary depending on the street. Some sidewalks have been implemented a long time ago and are require some maintenance or refresh. Others are recently installed and wide and provide a very comfortable walking environment for pedestrians. So we would look to identify, again, opportunities to add more sidewalks where needed based on the community feedback and the needs assessment, but also identify what we can do to upgrade the existing sidewalks through some of the other programs. The study area is also very well served by transit. in addition to the Purple Line LRT, which runs along Wheeler and Martin Luther King Boulevard, providing a service up to Palm Center. The study area has more than 8 bus routes that terminate or provide service to the Southeast Transit Center. And so there's certainly a lot of adequate transit coverage. And as part of the study, we would look at opportunities to assess the connectivity of the buses, look at ridership, and identify barriers to the community to get to some of the transit amenities in the community. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve Spillett to talk about land use and housing, as well as demographics.
Greetings, everyone. So CDS wanted to help the team just make sure that we're sort of current on the state of the land use markets in the study area, and best understand the opportunities and constraints economically and in terms of market demand that will influence the kinds of implementation recommendations that we come up with, so that we can produce implementation recommendations that both further the economic development objectives for the area and find economic and market opportunities that can help implement some of the other aspects of the recommendations. So a few findings from a brief update that we've conducted. The population in the study area is growing again after some years of stagnation or a little bit of a decline. So we have some population growth. It is still skewed towards older residents. There's a greater concentration of residents in age ranges over 55 than elsewhere in the city. It remains dominantly African-American, although there's a sizable share of the population that identifies as Hispanic or Latino as well. In terms of the kinds of work that people who live here, the kinds of occupations they have, there's a high concentration relative to the city overall of people in an office and administrative or healthcare support occupations. And there's also, in terms of household income, there's a greater concentration of households that are at the lower end of the income spectrum than what you see in the city overall. Next slide. We looked at trends, market trends related to housing. Probably one of the most significant ones that you may have noticed has been a dramatic swing upward in for sale home prices in the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic. The median prices for single family homes have reached into the almost 300,000. Townhomes are even higher, probably because they tend to be newer than a lot of the homes, the single family detached homes in the area. For renters, average rents in the area are moderate by Houston's standards, but have also been rising here in the last year. So I'm sure that's been noticed as well. That comports with what's happening nationally with a very strong rental market. Just some new developments of note that are happening that we'll be cognizant of as we move through the study. There's a multifamily income restricted affordable housing project near South McGregor and 288 called Regency Lofts. The Houston or the Harris County Housing Authority is also planning a multifamily project. It will also have a small retail component at the Southeast Transit Center. So an exciting project there. It's also worth noting that the Houston Business Development Inc. that owns the Palm Center is spearheading the development of new single-family homes for first-time home buyers, entry-level pricing in areas off of Griggs Road near the Palm Center, and is also planning some workforce apartments along the north side of Griggs across from the Palm Center. Next slide. Regarding commercial uses, the lease space for commercial businesses in the area does remain at moderate lease rates, but the market is has shown some positive absorption recently. Obviously, in retail, the most notable thing that's happened has been the relocation and expansion of H-E-B from its original location at Scott and OST to its new store on 288 near North McGregor. This is an area where there's been a lot of work done in past studies, and so we're not redoing that. We're just mindful of the recommendations that have been made in those studies, where there's an emphasis on reoccupancy, rehabilitation, and renovation of your existing commercial spaces, especially retail space, looking for a variety of types of users that can occupy space, not just pure retail businesses, and that any new development needs to come in small increments, because you really have enough existing space to handle the demand that you have right now. It just needs to be improved in some cases. A couple commercial developments of note. There's a site on OST between Griggs and Calhoun that's going to be a facility for women veterans. And then the Palm Center itself has a lot of plans for expanding its property. It's near full occupancy as it's been renovating, and wants to do a new building with a lot of healthcare focused occupants. So they probably will be modifying their campus here in the coming years.
So next we'll focus on the environment and environmental issues here. We'll look at, next slide, please, Hassan. So parks and open space. So we have Herman Park, a big city park just outside of our study area to the east. But our study area does include two major green space and open spaces, and that's McGregor Park and Brays Bayou. But if you really look at the center and this primary focus of our area, you don't see a lot of green. You don't see a lot of green around residential. And that really speaks to what we're studying here and what we're trying to uncover and looking for projects to implement that speak to a healthier community. So we'll be studying those areas without that green space and try to find one linkages to Brays Bayou, McGregor Park, the Spark Parks, the small little parks, but also adding green space for recreation. Next slide. Actually, David, would you speak to this slide, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is David Graney. I'm with the infrastructure side with Gage Engineering. And this map shows the Brays Bayou 100-year floodplain in blue and the 500-year floodplain in peach. As many of you have experienced, there is a flood hazard in this area, especially with hurricanes and such. Harris County Flood Control District has performed a study called Project Brays that identified drainage improvements to reduce the risk of flooding in the watershed, or just in the area in general. This includes channel improvements, raising bridges higher over the bayou. There are other improvements elsewhere along Brays Bayou that also include ponds. This is just to give you an idea of how the floodplain looks in the area. Next slide, please. Now we will talk a little bit about infrastructure. This is the water infrastructure, and this would also be similar with the wastewater and stormwater. But in general, we did an assessment of public utilities, and we are portraying the ages of the utilities within the district. Many of the water and wastewater pipes are very old, older than 30 years, which exceeds their useful service life of 30 years. And there may be opportunities to coordinate with the city of Houston on roadway improvements as part of future projects. The utilities within those stretches could be replaced at the same time as the roads. The OST Palm Center district could even be reimbursed for water and wastewater projects through the City Enterprise Fund. Next slide, please. Thank you.
And I'll just add on to what David was speaking about. With that aging infrastructure, certainly as we dig into it and we know that new projects will be coming online, we're going to be looking at ways that every dollar spent for that infrastructure has multiple benefits. So not only is it what's put in the ground, but what can we build upon that is useful for the community? Sidewalks, open space, green space, trees, those type of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley. We'll switch gears now and talk about the survey feedback. Christina, did you want to speak?
Actually, I want to take a second. We have a question, and I believe it's for Steve. The question is, what does the workforce housing on Griggs mean?
Basically, they are looking to do partnering with other organizations to do multifamily apartments that would be targeted to people between 80% and 120% of the area median income. So people who are kind of in the middle of the income spectrum. It is often difficult to build new apartments for that particular income group, and existing programs for affordable housing tend to focus on the lower end of the income spectrum. So this would be people who are generally working, but they make just sort of median level incomes.
Thank you. Okay, we can go to the slide about the survey. So we're going to take 5 minutes to take a survey. We want to really get your feedback and engage the community. Hassan has put the link in the chat just in case you're using your phone for Zoom. So if you go to the chat feature, you can click the link. If you are not using your phone and you're with us on a computer, you can scan this QR code that's on your screen right now. And if we can, just take the time to complete the survey right now, and then we'll come back and finish the presentation. Just checking in. If you're having any trouble with the survey, feel free to drop it in the chat or drop a message in the chat or raise your hand and I will get with you. We have about 3 minutes remaining. We have about 3 minutes remaining to take the survey. Miss Julia, I will email you the survey after the town hall meeting. Yes, I will email you the survey as well. And it is 7:05. So if you have not had an opportunity to complete the survey, I will make sure that we send it out when we send out the recording of this webinar. Okay, so we have reached the question and answer session of our town hall meeting. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I can allow you to talk. Okay, we have one. Okay, Mr. James, you have the ability to speak.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
We
You
can.
can.
First, good evening to all of you and those listening as well. Thank you for this very well put together presentation. A couple of the questions I was asking earlier, in my capacity with the council lady's office, I get communications every week from the community about sidewalks within the district. One of the challenges we face in the district is funding of these projects. I don't know if all of you are aware, but for many of the sidewalk projects that are done throughout the district, each council district is given a sum of money, not a whole lot, but we are tasked with trying to figure out the best usage of these funds to repair sidewalks. It's called Metro dollars, to repair sidewalks and other mobility issues like speed cushions and things of that nature. My question that I had earlier was, as this project moves forward, will this group seek funding sources for sidewalk projects?
And the short answer to that is absolutely. And that's one of our task goals, is to look for funding and look for funding partnerships. Damon, would you be able to add a little bit more to that?
Sure. Yeah, specifically the dollars that are allocated through the council office, as you said, are very small dollars in this big scheme of things, but it's also partnering with Metro. As Metro's doing its boost corridors, as the new projects around light rail expansion are coming on board, and those opportunities, those are also ways to get those funds. But in addition, the management district has what's called FTA grantee status, which means that it, just like Metro, just like the city of Houston, has the authority to go after Federal Transit Administration dollars independently of those other entities. That's something that was put in place when the first year or two that we created the management district, low and all those years ago. So there are a number of funding sources outside of the city's coffers direct that can be pulled into play here, including H-GAC, including some state flood mitigation dollars. So depending on what the actual projects are that come out of this study for implementation, those projects that were previously envisioned or at least previously set forth for further study that are then put in implementation here will all have funding sources attached to them.
Excellent. Our office, I should say, had an excellent experience working with our partners at Metro to install the basic shelters at various corners. I noticed the one that you were showing earlier as a bus stop that ties directly into the sidewalks, right? We're interested in those types of installations in our district as well, specifically those bus stations at high use areas where currently it's just a stick, just the pole in the ground. We are the one that we work on with them, help to make it a more safe experience for those patrons who are our constituents.
Sure, Metro's re-envisioning its shelters across the board as relates to right now its boost corridors. So there's a whole process underway to establish a new kit of parts, a new set of tools to bring to that discussion around the city. It will happen first on the boost corridors, and then from their side as well, as funding becomes available and partners are brought to the table who can provide that funding, then it can happen in other along other corridors. But there's a clear understanding on Metro's part that the shelters of the past are not the shelters of the future.
And if
We
I,
have
I'm sorry, Christina, this is Nikki, guys. If I can say something, the district is working with Metro, City of Houston, and other partners for those very things that you are speaking of, Stephen. One of the particular strategies behind this particular study was to partner with the OST, Almeda Corridors Redevelopment Authority, to look at the overlay of the CIP work that's happening in this area. So funding was at the forefront of how do we get this done, because we understand this area has been overstudied and people want to see things change. Additionally, like Damon said, we are also working with Metro to coordinate regarding those shelters along the boost corridors, but then looking at those particular sites that you mentioned that do not have a typical footprint for a large bus shelter. And so how do we accommodate riders along those transit corridors who still need safety and coverage from the elements and still need comfort as they wait on their buses? So we're working with Metro as well as our team to look at mini shelters. And these shelters have a smaller footprint that are able to have the same accommodations as the larger shelters throughout the district. So we'll be happy to coordinate with the council member's office to chat more about it, as well as Metro, so that we can look at a broader spectrum. But for this study area, some of the shelters that you saw, the shelters that you did see on the screen are already, kind of throughout the district, but we're also looking at a mini shelter option.
Okay, we have a follow-up question about Metro, and it says, aren't Metro's funds for sidewalk infrastructure exclusive only to places where they have the right-of-way? Please specify.
No, Metro does not own the right-of-way that the sidewalks sit on. That's City of Houston right-of-way. So it's the Metro, those transit improvement dollars come back to the city as a lump sum fund, and then they're distributed based on two things. One, Metro has separately a whole sidewalk program that's built on a matrix of current usability of sidewalks and current availability of partners to work with them to actually implement that. And then B, on the city side, it's part of how the sidewalk program on the city's similar program is funded. So no, there's no restriction as to where those sidewalk dollars are used.
Thank you, Damon. We have a question for, I think this is going to be for Gage. And the question is, how much does it cost to fund a mile or so of sidewalk?
A mile of sidewalk. I don't know off the top of my head.
And I might be able to add to that. I could tell you what a typical sidewalk costs per linear foot. And what we usually find on a city project within right-of-way, it's about, for a 5-foot wide sidewalk, which is the minimum, it's between $50 and $100 a linear foot. Generally, it's on that lower side for straight sidewalks, and then there's certainly some complications that make it go up to that $100 a linear foot. So a mile, a little over 5,000 linear feet. Don't put me on the spot for doing math right now, but about $50 to $100 a linear foot, if that answers your question.
Yes, he said thanks. We have a follow-up question, Damon, about the right-of-way. So these are general mobility fund dollars?
Correct. The money that comes back from Metro to the city that is used for sidewalk improvements is general mobility fund.
Okay, we have another question. Could this study potentially purpose a walkable places designation to ensure future developments provide great sidewalks?
And Christina, I just kind of responded to that. It definitely is a candidate for walkable places. It's a little bit different, a little bit nuanced, because we do have a corridor that is managed and maintained by TxDOT. So it's a state highway road, which is Highway 90 OST. And so it's a little bit nuanced, but of course we can definitely look into that designation for Griggs and other corridors that are adjacent to Old Spanish Trail.
Okay. That was a little rush of questions, and it seems like a lot of questions are about the walkability. So I'm interested to see the results from the survey. Do we have any additional questions?
I think we did get a follow-up question from Maid Gardner.
Oh, yes, we do. Can Metro buses add more capacity for bikes or allow them inside? I don't believe we have a representative from Metro on.
And Hassan, would you be able to speak to that as transportation planning and being very knowledgeable on that?
So right now, most buses or some buses are equipped with rack and roll. So the racks that you see at the front of the bus, I know the City of Houston or Metro is making them more available on their fleet. Right now, in terms of allowing a bike inside, it's usually limited to, if I'm not mistaken, the light rail, the purple line, red line, etc. In terms of actual buses, it's I don't believe your standard city buses allow for that. Some newer buses, especially the articulated buses, the longer 60-foot buses, which the newer versions of those, which are kind of part of the Metro Rapid, let's say the Metro Rapid network, almost act like a train and allow for some of them, depending on the configuration, can allow for some bikes, but generally the rule of thumb is you can't let bikes inside a bus. You typically you have to utilize a rack and roll, rack in front of the bus. Allowing a bike inside is typically, depending on the agency, allowed for trains, light rail transit. And it's not everywhere on the train. There are specific, areas within the cars that allow for somebody to roll their bike on and kind of stand or place the bike. Hope that answers the question.
And Hassan, while I have you, can you provide a proposed timeline for a project?
In terms of the timeline of the overall process for the project? Yes.
Yes.
So right now we're at step one, which is the needs assessment. Following this town hall, we are going to start moving towards conceptual plan development. And it's essentially coming up with the recommendations at a high level. It'll be at a map level, identifying proposed projects, which we will be sharing with the community for feedback in April. So there will be, the information and the materials will be shared online on Social Pinpoint, which we'll talk about, right before we wrap up the call. It'll be made available. We'll also have follow-up, surveys targeted on those recommendations, a conceptual plan where you can provide feedback and comments. And then following that, we are looking to have a second town hall in July of 2022, and that's really when we are able to take the conceptual plan and the feedback that the community provides, put some detail to them in terms of costs and renderings, as well as a draft implementation plan, and put it to the community, and also have a town hall meeting. Hopefully, I think for July 2022, hopefully there's no new strain of COVID, then we're able to have a hybrid in-person as well as online a town hall to allow for more interaction and also to allow for more feedback. And so that will be in July. And then following that, we are going to work on a draft, which we will post online as well, or make available for feedback before the study's wrapped up in September.
Okay, this is kind of a two-part question. Regarding the bus shelters and other possible infrastructure development, is there an effort to create a neighborhood identity?
And Christina, I'll answer that one. I did answer that question in the chat, but the district is working on a collaborative branding opportunity for the area, and we've approached it from a district-wide context, paying particular attention to each distinct and diverse area in the district. And so it's a progressive work, and yes, we are working to develop that identity for the area. We just have a lot of stakeholders that we have to communicate with and to get buy-in and to advocate for what we would like to put in the area. But yes, it is in the works. And we've had a series of consultants work with us on that process, from SWA Group to the Goodman Corporation and a couple of others to help us work and navigate this effort.
Thank you, Nikki. The second part of that question is, who will do the conceptual renderings?
As of yet, SWA Group has done quite a few, but with each of the studies that we have we've had in this area, there's been some sort of concept presented. And our goal is to bring those into a cohesive nature that everybody can somewhat agree on. So no one person has been decided just yet.
Thank you so much. Okay, does anyone have any additional questions? Hassan, I believe, is going to do a walkthrough of Social Pinpoint, but if you have a question come up within that time, feel free to type it in the chat.
Thank you, Christina. And so just in terms of the call to action or next steps, we really need your feedback and input throughout the project and the process. So please sign up to receive emails and newsletters with Southeast Houston, and the link is provided below. As I mentioned, the next step is it will be the development of the conceptual plan and recommendations, which we will share. We'll provide to the community in April 2022, and we will look for your feedback and comments to help shape the plan. And then, as I mentioned, we are looking to have a future town hall meeting in July of this year. Once we have the conceptual plan and recommendations, as well as draft implementation plan to put to the community and get feedback on the recommendations and priorities before we wrap up the study and come up with a 10-year CIP plan. In terms of comments and feedback, it can be provided at any time throughout the project. The 9-month study process. Information on the project is provided on the Houston Southeast website. We also have a dedicated social pinpoint engagement page that's specific to the project, where we will add all information, all materials there, including the survey which you just completed, copies of the presentation, also the recording to this meeting, and it can be accessed through the Houston Southeast Management District website, as well as this QR code. And feel free to use your phone. We'll also drop a link to the website shortly, but feel free to scan your the QR code and it'll take you to the portal. I am going to provide a very brief overview of the social pinpoint page. So we'll start off at the Houston Southeast website, Houston southeast.org/projects, where there is a information on the project and also a link to the social pinpoint page. Over here, you will be able to access any surveys at any time. Currently, we will have this survey up for a few weeks, the one that we just completed, information on upcoming events. We also have 2 interactive ways to provide feedback at any time during the project. One is an interactive map, which we'll go through. The other one is a community ideas, which is basically, think of it as sticky notes, where we can provide comments at any time. And so for the interactive map, what you'll be able to do here is, and this can be done on your mobile phone as well as on a desktop, be able to provide comments, suggest any ideas, or point out something that you like in the community. And it's almost like leaving a sticky note. And if you have any ideas, throughout over the course of the next few weeks and months, feel free to leave those comments here on the map, and more information will be provided as we move forward with the project. Any questions or comments so far on the social pinpoint?
I don't see any questions on social pinpoint, but Mr. Stephen James has another question. Mr. James, do you mind unmuting and I guess elaborate on what you're asking?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Again, I am enjoying this conversation, and it's a very good presentation on future plans. However, earlier in the discussion, it was talked about we've studied for the past 10 years. Okay, are we having another study now, or is this an opportunity to move some of these plans forward? What are we talking about?
I'll take it. So one of the first steps that we took as a team was to review all the studies that have taken place within the zone in the area and consolidate the findings of those studies. And what we're actually developing is an implementation plan. So as far as the proposed timeline, our project is about 9 months. And so if you go back to the slide with all the studies, Hassan.
Right.
Yeah, so what we're doing is
Yes.
developing an implementation plan. So we're well aware of all of the studies and the findings and recommendations of those studies.
Wonderful.
And-
So I apologize.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. James.
So what I'm guessing is the purpose of this gathering is the beginning of the implementation plan, and as you said, approximately 9 months-ish to have an implementation plan. Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to hear.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in terms of the timeline for the actual projects, so we're focused on a 10-year CIP plan. We recognize that we can't implement everything at once. You know, it's subject to funding and subject to when other projects are happening. But really our focus is on the 10 years. And that can be, some projects will be, almost, I don't want to say immediate, but, short term, the 1 to 3 year, 1 to 2 year mark, because it does take some time, depending on the type of recommendation. It will take time to, to actually design the project, but also go through permitting and approvals, and then shovels in the ground. Some of the projects are medium term, so between the 3 and 5 years, and then the latter portion would be kind of between the 5 and 10 years. We are going to also identify projects that are going to happen beyond the 10-year CIP plan, but really the implementation and the funding and the identification of the partnerships, whether it's City of Houston, Metro, Harris County, TxDOT, et cetera, is going to be that 10-year, right? And identifying, prioritizing projects and identifying approximately when they would be implemented, subject to design timelines, but also funding.
May I ask one last question?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and part of my role as a Director of Constituent Services is informing the people who I serve. What do you think would be a reasonable time period that I could say that we could start informing my civic club presidents, my community leaders? I'm not talking about anything in the next 30 days. That's not what I'm saying. Do you think it would be reasonable that we could start sharing information with the community, say June?
Actually, it would be helpful if you shared the information like this public meeting. So our next town hall meeting, you can share that with the civic club presidents and any email list that you have.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I'd be happy to do that.
And Stephen, I will say we've made a few direct calls to some of the civic leaders in this particular study area, and many of them are on the call today. And
Excellent.
so we want everybody engaged from the onset, because we don't want anyone to feel as if we did not include or engage or do enough engagement to make sure that everybody has a voice for this long-term vision for the area.
Wonderful.
Hassan, we have another question. When does the survey presented today close, and how can someone make their friends aware of it? And if they have additional feedback outside of today's survey, how do they provide that?
So the survey will be open for a few weeks, actually. As a matter of fact, we are looking at actually having paper and pen copies of the survey out in the community. And so the survey will be open until April, once we move into this kind of the conceptual plan, where we're going to seek additional feedback on the another survey on the plan. So there's no the survey will be up for a few weeks on Social Pinpoint. In terms of providing access to the survey, what I would suggest is I am going to switch gears and kind of go back to the website here for a second. The survey can be accessed either through the QR code. So we'll have this presentation uploaded to Social Pinpoint. On the Social Pinpoint site itself, we do have the survey embedded within the site. So you're able to pull up the survey and provide feedback, and it's both desktop and mobile friendly. Also that the link that we provided will not expire. It will be active, throughout the project, or for the next few weeks. Hopefully that answers the question. And please, please share the survey, the information on the project, to your neighbors, other community members. We certainly want to hear from you, and the more awareness we have, the more successful the project will be.
Do we have any additional questions? Yes, you can use your social media to get the word out. Mr. James, you are with Councilwoman Shabazz's office, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You should have received an email from me that had a link to a Dropbox folder, which for this meeting in particular had Facebook, Instagram, posts and stories, and a plethora of social media collateral to help get the word out. We will do that again for the second town hall meeting and some for just the general project overall.
Wonderful.
I see Hassan doing something on his computer, so I was giving him a second.
Just want to make sure I bring this page up again, just so people see the link as well as the QR code for the social point.
So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. If anyone has any questions, and it's on the screen as well, feel free to reach out. I will get a copy of the presentation, this recording, maps, and that collateral to you all. And hopefully we can stay in touch and spread the word about the study and the project, and have even more people come to the next town hall meeting, because your input is very, very important. Okay, Brad.
Well, with that, I think we'll close the meeting, and thank you all very much for attending.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Thank you again, guys.
Good night.